Imagine a movie where nearly all of the righteous protagonists are white, Christian crusaders for justice in an unjust dystopian society. And now imagine that nearly all of the antagonists are part of a violent left-wing coalition consisting of Black Panther extremists and Latino Marxist radicals. It's difficult to entertain the notion that any Hollywood film in the modern era would have a premise similar to this one, though if you reverse the aforementioned racial and political orientations of the characters, you have the Purge election year. If you have yet to see any of the Purge movies, they are set in a dystopian, not too distant future America in which a group of political elites known as the New Founding Fathers of America have enacted a policy in which all crime is made legal one night per year. The stated reason for this is so that citizens may quote-unquote purge themselves of their malevolent and animalistic impulses by embarking on an evening of malice and violence against their fellow man, largely targeting the poor and homeless in doing so. The institution of the purge, the government narrative goes, has resulted in much lower crime, a low unemployment rate, and a strong economy during the rest of the year, supposedly because both the undesirable impulses and the undesirable individuals have been purged from society. To say that this film has some noticeable political undertones would be a vast understatement. The movie is blatant Hollywood propaganda at its finest and is one of the most overtly left-wing pieces of mainstream cinematic fiction that I have seen in a while. In contrast to the hypothetical scenario I put forth before, the film's actual premise is one where the group who advocates for the continuation of and participation in the Purge is largely composed of white nationalists, the wealthy, Christians, the NRA, exploitative insurance companies, and advocates of small government. Basically, it's any political faction that could be considered right of center. On the contrary, those shown to be on the side of wanting to end the Purge are almost exclusively minorities, Crip gang members, and social justice warrior types. The only two white protagonists are Senator Charlie Roan, played by Elizabeth Mitchell, and her bodyguard, Leo Barnes, who works constantly to keep the senator safe from harm during the film's titular event. Roan is running for president on an anti-purge platform against the twisted Minister Edwidge Owens, who seeks to continue the purge and represents the wishes of the new founding fathers. I'm sure the film's presentation of a blonde woman who crusades for the justice of the downtrodden, poor, and marginalized running against a crazed and callous white man representing the evil societal elite is just pure happenstance, and is in no way meant to skew our views of two other real-life candidates that might be running for some sort of political office this year. The movie starts off 2 days before Purge night and shows riots breaking out in Washington, D.C. The protesters claim that the new founding fathers are using the Purge for their economic agenda so that they do not have to spend money on the poor and homeless by eliminating them from society. We all know that everyone who favors cutting government spending does so out of hatred for the poor. Of course, the NRA also voices its opinion in support of the Purge because we all know gun owners are evil and their political action group merely seeks to make money off of legalized crime by boosting gun sales during this time. Switching gears to the poorer residential areas of DC, we meet black convenience store owner Joe Dixon, his Latino immigrant assistant Marcos Daly, and EMT Laney Rucker, all of whom vehemently oppose the Purge but disagree as to whether Senator Roan can win and end it. We are then reminded of the evils of big business when an insurance company calls Dixon regarding the increase in insurance rates for his store on Purge night in breach of contract of the rate that they agreed upon before. The new rates are too much for him to afford and compel him to guard his store personally on Purge night while simultaneously reminding the viewer that it is always in the nature of businesses to defraud the little guy in order to make a buck and that they can always do so without consequence. In addition to all of this, Dixon has to deal with a particularly petulant teenager and her friend who attempt to shoplift an Apollo candy bar from his store before the Purge. The two get upset when caught and imply that they will exact revenge on him once the night of chaos rolls around. I find it interesting to note that these two teenagers are just about the only two people of color in the movie who also happen to be antagonists, and minor ones at that. Of course, they have to have had some sort of privilege in order to be vilified, so it makes sense that the writers decided to have them don private school uniforms to exemplify that they came from a family of means, and therefore can be justifiably despised by the average viewer. Because again, everyone knows that all wealthy people are evil and deserve to be hated. Now, on the night of the Purge, the new Founding Fathers enact a plan to assassinate Senator Roan in order to end her anti-Purge campaign. To execute this plan, they hire mercenaries who, of course, could have just been a bunch of trained murder thugs looking to make money, but the writers specifically made them a neo-Nazi paramilitary force donning swastikas and Confederate flags. In my view, all this did was further racialize the movie and portray white people in a negative light. In mentioning this, I am in no way saying that I sympathize at all with white nationalism because neo-Nazis espouse an inherently evil ideology and they deserve all of the punishment that they get within the context of the film. What I am critiquing is the decision by the writers to continue to bring race in as a dividing factor between the good guys and the bad guys when it is completely unnecessary. The frustration I have with this film wouldn't be so pronounced if the filmmakers were consistent in their negative portrayal of real-world violent and evil groups, but they aren't. While everyone knows that neo-Nazis are bad both in the real world and in the film, Another real-life violent crime syndicate known as the Crips is shown to be in alliance with the anti-Purge protagonists and freedom fighters by assisting them with fighting the mercenaries. This double standard with regard to two real-world, malevolent, racially segregated groups is annoying to say the least. As our protagonists attempt to evade and hide from the death squad, Roan is finally captured and brought to a midnight purge mass at the overtly Catholic named Church of Our Lady of Sorrows. There, Minister Edwidge Owens is leading a pseudo-religious cleansing ritual in order for participants to quote-unquote purge and purify themselves through acts of human sacrifice. Naturally, Roan is one of these planned sacrifices for the congregation of purge fanatics. Predictably, she does not meet her ensuing fate as the band of resistance fighters infiltrates the church, causing the attendees to flee and disperse. After this, the neo-Nazi mercenaries return to combat the rebels, and there end up being heavy casualties on both sides. Ultimately, the good guys come out victorious, though Joe Dixon ends up mortally wounded before he dies. 2 months later, it is revealed that Roan has won the election in a landslide, though many of the new Founding Fathers supporters have taken to the streets in violent protest over the outcome, indicating that the transition will not go over smoothly. So what really annoyed me about this movie was not the mediocre entertainment value that I got out of it, but rather the blatant propaganda that it was pushing throughout the entire film. It was, in my opinion, politically and racially divisive, and continued to push the fictional narrative that those who happen to be white, religious, and in favor of small government are regressive and evil racists who hate marginalized communities and want to see them destroyed. Because of course, we all know in real life that it's conservatives and libertarians who adore violent chaos in the streets while having a particular disdain for objective morality, the rule of law, and natural rights, not the left. Oh wait, never mind, sorry, it is the left who often uses riots and violence to forward their false and evil political agenda. They are the ones who thrive on using immoral and coercive means in pursuit of what they see as a justified ends. In this review, I did talk a good amount about the racial aspects of the characterization within the film, but only because the film made it so obvious. I actually despise identity politics because it strips persons of their individuality in political thought and is used as a tool by the left to divide and conquer our nation along racial and socioeconomic lines. I bring it up because I was so annoyed by my experience watching this film in the theater that actually confirmed my suspicion that the demonization of white people as evil oppressors is having its desired effect on many audience members, especially racial minorities. I will premise this point by saying that I am of half Mexican descent, live in one of the highest density per capita Hispanic cities in the United States, and have a family that is super racially diverse, so I am not coming from a bigoted or regressive point of view. That being said, when I watched the movie in a theater in which about 3/4 of the audience was Hispanic, it really got under my skin when every single time one of the white villains was killed, the theater erupted in applause, laughter, and cheers. Now, of course, within the context of the movie, those villains deserve to die, and applause wouldn't necessarily be unwarranted, but what made it frustrating is the fact that when the two aforementioned minor black villains were deservedly killed, there was only silence. Now, I typically don't ever hear clapping in a movie theater right after a villain's death, except on rare occasion, but the fact that this audience cheered exclusively for the deaths of each white villain is what made it clear to me that the left's false narrative of racial politics is having its desired effect of contempt for Caucasians within the hearts and minds of minorities. Forget the fact that the violent crime rate is lower in the white community than in either the black or Hispanic communities. White people are out to get you, and they should be demonized because of it. Anyway, this ends my political propaganda review of the Purge election year. It's one of the most blatantly propagandistic movies that I've seen in recent years, and the reaction that I witnessed in the audience of the theater really compelled me to do something to call out the type of programming that happens in the media all the time. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, so if enough of you like this movie review, I'll be looking to do more in the future. Subscribe to stay tuned. Thanks.